His onboard pictures here as he gets back into the back of one of the players' cars. Vasa Fernandez, Mexican Michelle Jourdain, Mario Dominguez, Michael Andretti, as you can well see, Shinji Nakano and Tora Takagi. Now both Fernandez and Takagi have been taken away to hospital. We understand that Takagi has a suspected fracture in his pelvis and Adrian's complaining of neck pain, but otherwise the drivers are okay, and 16 cars took the restart, but we are now currently under yellow. Greg?
Well, Kim Green, can you tell us what the rationale was behind bringing Michael in like that?
Well, you know, we haven't stopped yet, and we're just presuming a lot of the guys that have already pitted once will pit again before it goes back to green. So we should get back up to about where we were. The other bit of a gamble is we're thinking, you know, this race has to run half distance. So lap 36 could get called. We could now run that and still only be at our maximum number of laps on the racetrack. So, you know, when you're back where we're at, we've got to gamble a bit in the rain, and I don't think it's going to dry out. So we're just trying a bit of strategy to see if it gets us a few points and a few positions up there.
Thanks for sharing that with us.
Okay.
I've got no doubt it's going to end up being declared at 36. So what Kim's gambling on is by taking that stop now, they've got to they're allowed a maximum of 20 laps before they have to pit in terms of the pit window opportunities in the rule book here. So that may vault them up depending on where other people decide to stop. Bill, and you've got an update on the drivers.
Yes, we understand that both Tora Takagi and Adrian Fernandez will be released from the Gold Coast Hospital. They have been cleared. Of course, they're bruised, battered, and will be very sore for a while. That brings into question their participation in that weekend round next Sunday in Fontana, California. But the best news of all is that they are okay generally, and after a crash like that, you have to be thankful that nobody was more seriously hurt. It says a lot not only for the build of these race cars, but also for the quick action from the safety marshals and everybody concerned here on the main straight. Mark Osler.
Billy, as if the rain isn't enough of a drama for the drivers and teams, some of the drivers now are radioing and saying it's getting very dark out here as well, so the amount of light on the track is becoming a serious issue.
So again, referring back to what Kim was talking about a moment ago, Mark, with the race likely, and not confirmed but likely, I reckon, to be declared at the minimum distance, which will be lap 36. That's 20 laps away, and they're only allowed to do a maximum of 20 laps before they're forced to pit to take on fuel and tyres. And so you're going to see a rash of pit stops here in a moment as everybody tries and sort themselves out, because there'll then be no more stops to the end of this race. It'll just be a clean run. What race there may be left. We don't know how much green flag running we're going to get in all this as well. We might be stuck under yellow for a while.
Dario Franchitti, his last run on the Gold Coast, at least in the short term. There's cars coming into the pit now. Tracy's in, Vassa's in, right behind him, and I think Jourdain Jr. coming in as well.
Team Fernandez go to work on that car. Team Rahal behind him in the Shell car. And Jimmy's away. Real struggle to get power down.
Good pit stop though. They gained a position there.
And Nakano drops to the back of that queue, so that all got reversed around. Jourdain in the middle now. The two Rahal cars running together. There's Vasa.
In stereo.
Yep. How punishing.
I mentioned Franchitti. There's Nakano coming out, so that was a disappointing one there for Team Fernandez, and the bosses in the hospital watching.
And this is starting to be a nightmare for Jonquera, because he must pit before lap 20 or on lap 20. It's lap 17. In fact, we're on to lap 18 now according to that graphic, and Jonquera has not taken his compulsory stop, and so I reckon you'll find that he's going to have to come out almost instantaneously, and we understand that the crew are starting to roll out for that at the moment. Greg?
Paul Tracy's been on the radio to Barry Green and the team at Team Cool Green. He says there's flooding now in the track in just the most unbelievable of places. He's saying you should let the rest of the guys pit, do their stops and call the thing. He thinks it's just not safe to continue. So we'll have to keep listening to the radio communication from some of these drivers, but some unhappy punters out there, as you can expect.
Yeah, Greg, it's turning into a real nightmare, isn't it? The visibility is appalling. There's too much water on the circuit. We're trying to push through and get an event done here. but the conditions are just working against everybody at the moment, which is a great shame because this race had enormous potential to be tremendously exciting with the closeness of all of the cars in qualifying. Certainly the top 3 and 4 guys were going to turn on a great show for us. But the good news is that for a lot of people in southeastern Queensland, there's some rain falling at last, and so one man's loss is another man's gain.
Let's hope it spreads into New South Wales as well, and everywhere they need it. Meccano further back in the field, where every now and again we'll try and have a listen to Paul Tracy's communications there. Shinji Nakano, 53 starts in 3 years in this series, has never been on the podium, and he won't get a chance today. In fact, maybe no one will. We've had 12 races here, no one's won it twice. And I'll tell you what, you would have bet against that this year with 6 current drivers having been former winners here. You would have thought that one of them would nail a victory and do it for the second time, but that is unlikely at the moment. Christian Fittipaldi is saying to his crew that he doesn't think this race should go on. He doesn't think they can restart. Frankly, I'm not too sure.
Guys in front of me theoretically have still pit, right?
Those that have not yet stopped, just scanning down the monitor here at the moment, Jonquera, the leader, and Patrick Carpentier, who's in 6th place at the moment, have not stopped. They have to do so by lap 20 in accordance with the way the race strategies are now unfold and the compulsory pit stops that they have to take. What it's done, the new race formats this year, Bill, and we've talked about them in the studio through the previous 16 rounds of the series, it's taken away. There were people who won races last year who basically won them because they were in the right place at the right time in terms of the economy run, as
Junqueira finally comes in, yes.
And by forcing these compulsory pit stop windows on everybody, it allows them to run full rich and get on with it and go racing. So we're seeing real thoroughbred racing, not economy runs, throughout the course of the season.
Chris Cook has also told me that on top of that, to further ensure that there won't be economy runs, they are taking out the fuel button in the cars next year, so they'll have to run full rich all the time. They won't be able to tweak it so they can clean the mixture.
And it's much easier to do that when you've got a single engine suppression control either, which is possibly more significant than the removal of the mixture mapping control.
Good stop from Junqueira for what it's worth. I should say that if there is no race here, I mean, there are 11 drivers going into this round that still had a chance to finish second in the series, and Junqueira was one of them. He picked up a point for Friday qualifying.
Depending on how this race, what little racing we've had unfolds, it's been pretty catastrophic leaving Bruno out there and not actually taking that earlier stop like Cristiano and many of the others did. Basically, at the first opportunity, a bunch of them flew in. But the Ganassi team decided to keep Bruno out there, and after being at the top of the tables, he's now plunged back to the bottom of the pack. And if we don't get too much green flag racing, that's where he's going to stay. Not much you can do. I mean, an event like this is a lottery.
Patrick Carpentier, the only driver in the top 10. In fact, he's the only driver out there now to have not made a stop, according to our timing monitor in here. So players Forsyth are running a different strategy there. Tagliani, his teammate, has come in. Dominguez has made 3 stops. We've seen those. And Christian Fittipaldi, for obvious reasons, has made 3 stops with that engine trouble that he had, which they feel like they've fixed now, but we won't really know for a while because he can't get on the gas.
But he has actually radioed in, Bill, and confirmed that the thing is functioning properly.
So we're still crawling around the circuit here at the Gold Coast. We're a little uncertain of the future, but if you stay with us after the break, we'll find out. Laps down out of 50, and I can tell you, according to race control, we've had 13 minutes of green. That's actual racing, which is about 6 laps out of those 20, which is a very unfortunate situation here on the Gold Coast, but obviously safety is paramount here, and that's why we're in the situation we're in. Patrick Carpentier, I mentioned before the break, the only driver not to have made a pit stop here. We understand he will be called in shortly, but his radio's been very quiet as well, we can tell you that. We thought for a moment he might have lost radio contact, but he also has a pit board, so there's no problem there. But Dario Franchitti had that trouble in Miami, lost contact with his pit crew, and that is a major problem this day and age.
They're going to bring Pat in this time. They've rolled tyres out for him, and this is him on screen.
we'll get a result here, but it may not be a very satisfying one.
3 more laps of yellow and then they are going green. We're 19 laps in. The minimum required to declare this a race.
Card is asking, what do you think about doing that 3-lap run yellow and then go green? Where the track is right now, there's fucking...
They're asking Christian Fittipaldi's opinion of whether or not they can run 3 yellow and then go green, and there's a reason why we bailed out of the answer.
Yeah, there's a storm brewing too, by the way, just to change the subject. There's Patrick Carpentier peeling into the pits, his first stop today. They're crawling around here down the main straight, side by side, almost. They're not allowed to overlap, but they will peel off a little bit so they can just see what's going on.
See, Pat's got one of the, it's like a tinted yellow or orange visor which you can apply to the front of the helmet for these rainy conditions, just to, they actually improve your vision in these rocky conditions. So he's one of the drivers that's implemented that.
The pace car's going to come away into pit lane on the next circulation. Okay. Then they'll do those 3 laps under yellow.
Catch up, and nice job.
Carpentier's crew.
So that leaves the order: D'Amata, Brack and Tracy, Dixon, Canaan, Franchitti, and I can hear a rough engine in the background again, and if they do go racing, then it's likely to be a scattered pack once again. It's very heavy wet out there at the moment, and there's a determination to get some green flag racing in with the field at the moment.
As we ride again with Dario Franchitti, what a sprint that would be, especially in these conditions.
These guys will be really happy to get out of these cars at the end of the day and get out of here.
Dario went from 7th on the grid to 2nd before he crashed in Miami, 15 laps from the finish.
Sorry, if you'll look at the ducting, the rear brake ducting on the back of this car, I think it might be Dixon's or Jonquera's car we're looking backwards on, and they've actually taped up the ducts there to retain, or they maybe haven't completely taped it off, I can't quite see it too well, but they've either blocked it off or semi-blocked it off, and they're trying to boost the temperature on the rear brakes rather than have them cool out too much. Try and keep the braking efficient is what I'm trying to stumble through there.
Tracy just pulls wide, so does Canaan there, just getting away from the spray of the car in front of them. Greg Rust.
It's interesting, guys, just listening to the radio chat at the moment among the drivers. Tony Canaan on the radio just moments ago saying, tell me they're not dreaming of restarting this. He can't believe that they're entertaining that idea. And we heard Christian Fittipaldi a short time ago, so you know his sort of thoughts and views on it. Interesting situation right now.
Canaan's best.
And the thing is that, and this is not an unusual situation, this happens in various racing categories around the world, and you know, if you ask the drivers, they're going to want to stop. But the thing is, and it's hard because there are counter viewpoints here, but there's an awful lot of people that paid a lot of money to come and watch the show, and we've got our audience out there watching this afternoon on Network 10. You want to watch the show, so if you leave it to the 16 drivers, they'll turn the show off in 0.2 of a second and go back to the 5-star hotels and have a nice time, thank you very much, and they can well afford to do so.
Well, you talk about the value of this event to Queensland. Peter Beattie announced that in principle they wanted this event here for another 5 years, and he said that it tips about $50 million into the state's coffers. And it's not just about Queensland. This is an event that attracts people from all over Australia. The planes have been full in the days leading up to it. Mark Osler.
Paul Tracy's just radioed into Team Cool Green. Another problem is engine temperature. Paul was saying this car is unbelievably cold. It's so much colder out on the track now than it was even half an hour ago. Engine temperatures have gone through the floor. The team have advised him, pick another lower gear, Paul. Work the engine harder. Try and get some heat into it.
Well, there's something that you rarely hear. I mean, I might mention just further to those comments a moment ago, Bill, if you're out there in one of these things, you just absolutely would not want to be there. And what the drivers would counterpoint in this argument of let's press on with the show, they'll say there is no show. There's nothing to see. And, it's not going to be spectacular, nothing enjoyable about it. Let's just call it a day as Dixon comes in. Greg?
Yeah, not quite sure what the problem is for Scott Dixon. We overheard some radio chat just moments ago from Kyle Moyer, who's the crew chief for Dario Franchitti. They said there's a drama for him and let him go by. So Scott's come in now. It'd be interesting if Darryl can find out just what's gone wrong for Scott Dixon.
Dixon didn't get on the podium until Denver in round